Yes, F1 is back. Although it's not racing, the competition has started. F1 has moved from the cold Europe winter to the warmth of Bahrain for the first round of testing for 2026. And what did day one really tell us? It's less about who turned up, who set the fastest lap time, who did the most laps, or the off-track regulation controversy. Day one in Bahrain was all about what you didn't see. So let's dive in. Day one wasn't testing. Day one was a signal. Let me ask you something. When you looked at day one of Bahrain testing, what did you actually see? Lap times, headlines, a few photos on social media? Because if that's what you saw, you missed the real story. Day one of 2026 F1 testing didn't show us who's fastest. It showed us something much more important. It showed us who's ready for this new era and who might already be chasing. And by the end of this episode, I'm going to show you something else. Why the first 5 races of the season may already be tilting quietly before a single point has been scored. If you're new here and you like your Formula One without the noise, you don't have the time to scroll through all the articles and all the team and drivers' social media, then hit that like, subscribe and follow button. We're a small channel bringing you the big stories that you won't hear from the mainstream media, and every subscribe, follow and like helps us do that. All right, let's get into it. What fans think testing shows and what it actually shows. Most fans think testing is about the speed. Who topped the timesheets? Who looked quick on a push lap? Who ran the softest tyre? That's not what testing is. Testing, especially day one of a brand new regulation era, is about one thing. Does this car work? Because when regulations reset, performance means nothing until reliability exists. If a car can't run consistently, it can't gather the data. If it can't gather the data, it can't improve. If it can't improve, it falls behind. And that's why teams who look calm early usually start seasons strong. The first true signal. A working car is a competitive weapon. Here's the first major takeaway from day one. Some teams arrived with cars that clearly executed structured programs at Barcelona. Long runs, clean returns to garage, minimal visible panic. That tells you they trust their baseline. And when a team trusts its baseline this early in the season, development accelerates and quickly. Other teams who had more fragmented running or didn't run at all, who had more time in the garage or didn't come at all, had more installation checks or didn't do any. Well, it's not unusual that in a regulation reset, every lost hour just compounds because modern F1 isn't about instinct anymore. It is about data acquisition speed. The team that understands its car first develops fastest. So watch the garage, not the track. This is where insiders look. Here's something most viewers never think about, at least most don't. You can tell more from the garage than from the track. Calm garages win championships. They do. If the engineers are composed, if the mechanics aren't rushing, if runs are methodical, that means correlation is strong in every aspect. If you see bodywork off constantly, long static periods, repeated system checks, that usually means teams are still trying to understand the fundamentals. So when you watch testing, don't watch for lap times. Watch behaviour. Now I know that broadcasts don't always show you this, but you do get to see briefly inside garages. And it is really important not to just look at what is in the forefront of the screen, but what is happening behind. Because behaviour tells you about confidence. Why reliability now equals performance later. There's a pattern across every modern regulation reset. Teams that run clean early win early. Not always because they're fastest, but because they unlock performance sooner than the others. If your car runs reliably, you push setup limits earlier. You test upgrades sooner. You refine strategy faster. If your car is struggling, you spend weeks, months, even a season solving problems instead of adding speed to the car. And that gap builds quickly. And over seasons, that can turn into years. And it often shows up in the first 5 races. If you're enjoying this deeper breakdown, hit like and make sure you get the alerts for the next episode. Hit that subscribe on YouTube now and hit the follow button if you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts. I've set this podcast up for you, the fans who love Formula One, but you don't have the time to track every development and follow every story. So follow and subscribe to make sure you don't miss an episode and remain fully caught up. Back to it. The 2026 factor. Energy management will define everything. This is the era of energy. Now let's talk about the biggest shift already visible. Basically, energy. The 2026 cars place far greater emphasis on the hybrid deployment and electrical energy strategy. That means battery usage, deployment timing, regeneration efficiency, and the drag reduction. These will all define the race performance. Even on day one, teams weren't chasing lap times. They were mapping the energy behaviour, when to push, when not to push, when to save, when not, when to go. Because if energy deployment isn't optimised, you can lose massive time across a lap. Drivers who master this early, they will gain a huge advantage. Teams who don't will spend races just learning this stuff. Now, active aero and driver confidence, they are another key signal. Active aerodynamics, and I spoke about what Ferrari have been doing and how confident they are in my last episode. These cars are dynamically shifting between drag and downforce states, which introduces a really new challenge in stability during the transition. If the car becomes unpredictable when aero changes mode, drivers lose confidence. So when you see long, consistent runs in testing, teams are validating stability, not speed. And if you watch closely in the video footage of the cars, you will see that they are engaging their aero when they're on straights and then closing it when they're coming into corners. If it's unstable coming into the corners, you're going to find a lot of drivers running off the road. And that is where they are trying to minimize the instability. Drivers need to have confidence to be able to turn into those corners at high speed. And confidence is everything, because confident drivers push limits sooner. The hidden story that you're not seeing and is not being talked about in mainstream media. What is nobody saying yet? This is where we get to the part most outlets won't say clearly. Some teams will leave day one feeling very comfortable. Others will already know they are chasing, and you won't hear them say it publicly, but internally they know. If your car completed a structured, uninterrupted program, you're ahead operationally. If you struggled for continuous running, you're already behind in understanding. And in this era, understanding equals performance. Quick pause. If this kind of insight helps you see Formula One differently, subscribe now so you don't miss the next briefing. Because as testing unfolds this week, these signals will get stronger. Remember, we're a small channel bringing you the big stories. Every follow and subscription is helping us to get the stories you want to hear. All right, here's the reveal, right? Here's the big reveal. Who looks strongest and why the season may already be tilting away from many other teams. The reality of the regulation resets. The fastest car on day one rarely wins the season, and today that was Lando. But the most prepared team often wins the opening phase. And based on operational behaviour alone, not the lap times, there are already signs emerging. Some teams look composed. We'll look at Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, and McLaren. They look structured. They actually look ready. And I'm not surprised that these big 4 teams are ready. Of course, they have the money and the backing. They have the engineers and they have the experience. So it makes sense. The other being Alpine, Cadillac, Audi, they are going to struggle. And the big one is Williams, because they haven't done any shakedown testing. And day one is their day one of testing. So they are going to still be learning about the car. And that matters because the first 5 races of any season are shaped by preparation, not ultimate pace. If 1 or 2 teams arrive at race 1 already confident in reliability, energy management, and the aero behaviour, they are going to start way ahead. It won't necessarily be a dramatic difference, but in Formula One, it will be enough to control early strategy, enough to dictate development direction, enough to build momentum, and enough time to put pressure on the Constructors' Championship. Therefore, this has financial impacts down the track to be able to further develop when the season is over. And in Formula One, momentum of those teams that are getting it right early is incredibly hard to stop. Before you know it, they have 2, 3, 4 Constructors' Championships and Drivers' Championships. What this means for the championship moving ahead. So here's the big takeaway. Day one, it didn't decide anything, but it revealed the trajectories. It revealed who looks settled, who looks methodical, who looks comfortable. And it revealed that some teams may start the season reacting while others are starting to execute. Championships aren't won in testing, but the first phase of a championship is often shaped there. What to watch next? Over the next 2 days this week and the remaining 3 next week, watch for more long, uninterrupted runs showing who has reliability confidence, seems to have the best feel for the new cars, who is less focused on getting engineering data and more interested in understanding the limits of the car. Look at garage calmness. Look at energy deployment patterns. Which teams are having more consistent lap times, in particular between the laps they are doing and between team drivers. Energy deployment patterns. Which teams are having more consistent lap times, in particular between each lap and then between each team driver. Reliability consistency. Who is doing long runs regularly and who is spending more time in the pits? Ignore headline lap times. These mean nothing. Teams won't be trying to send a message during testing. They don't want to show their hand too soon. Watch behaviour. Look at the driver's body language in the garage. Look for the sidebar conversations happening in the back of the garage and look for smiles. Is everyone smiling and laughing? Because behaviour tells you readiness. That's where Formula One actually stands right now. Not the noise, not the headlines, not the reality, not the information that is being put out there in the mainstream media, not telling you who's running fastest, who's running slowest, who's doing less laps, who's doing more laps. If you want Formula One explained clearly, quickly and intelligently, subscribe and follow the All Motorsports Podcast so you don't miss an episode. This is the All Motorsports Podcast. F1 properly understood.